All right. Thank you, Carolyn. So, Carolyn and I have been talking about doing a publishing week for a little while, and what we really were hoping to do is set something up that is, approachable, friendly, a good learning environment for everybody, because we do understand that it can be complicated. There's a lot of information that gets thrown at you, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, so overwhelming that you can't do anything about it. So that's really the goal here, is to sort of over the course of the next 3 days, really give you a good introduction to the publishing. If you're already a little bit more of an expert in publishing, perhaps give you some new concepts that you haven't heard of, um, and go from there. So, as Carolyn said, I'm Natalie Jacobs. I'm the founder and CEO of Equalizer Consulting, and I specialize in metadata and rights management. And those, as a concept, they work really, really tightly together, and they're both very, very important. And the importance of metadata really leads into the rights space, whether you are an artist, a songwriter, or producer, or any other, person within the music industry. So, Mike, I'll turn over to you. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and what part of the publishing world are you in?
Yeah, appreciate the introduction. Mike Trampe, B.A.K, the producer whisperer. I'm the director of BeatStars Publishing. This is something we founded in 2020 in partnership with Sony Music Publishing. So we're the only company in the world that's built in the Sony. So every member over here gets a Sony score account. As you know, Sony's one of the leading publishers in the music business. So our partnership was pretty strategic and pretty big, and the business has only exploded every single year after year. To give you guys a little bit more clarity, our deals are 1 year admin deals where our members keep all ownership. So that's been something that really has helped and changed a lot because prior to us, no one could go get a 1 year deal from Sony. So that's what I do every day. I didn't start in here. I actually got into publishing full time in 2020. I'm approaching 20 years in the music business, but prior to this, I was the director of hiphopdx.com as the marketing director. So I worked a lot in journalism and online media, advertising, stuff like that. But yeah, so publishing, I knew about it, but 2020, I learned more. And listen, it's 2025, and I deal with a lot every day. We have a lot of members, a lot of songs, a lot of cases that are open to get songs cleared. And I still don't know everything. And I talk to people at Sony who've been there for 30 years and they don't know everything. So what you need to know about publishing is it's unpredictable and nobody really knows everything. So we're all learning, and I'm happy to be here.
That's awesome. I also agree. I've been doing this in publishing in some form for over 20 years, and I still don't know everything. And when I was on the label side, I was like, yeah, publishing, I totally got it. And then I started supporting Warner Chappell and was like, wow, that's a lot of stuff that they do that I actually had no clue about. And I made a lot of assumptions. So, thank you for that. Jamie, I turn over to you. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, people, friends, family. I am Jamie Dominguez. I am the National Director of Industry Relations at the MLC, better known, well, also known as the Mechanical Licensing Collective, not better known. We're just known as the MLC, which is just another acronym to add to the, um, ridiculous sea of acronyms that it makes up the music industry for whatever reason, because it's not complicated enough. But yes, so I work also on the publishing side of things. The Mechanical Licensing Collective was formed out of legislation called the Music Modernization Act, which was passed in 2018. And we were designated by the US Copyright Office to collect streaming mechanical royalties on behalf of songwriters, and music publishers. So we are the exclusive entity that administers the blanket license to all of the streaming platforms, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, all of these platforms where your music is streaming. We make sure they're licensed, and we also collect the royalties on your behalf and distribute them to you. And again, we are a nonprofit organization designated by the government to do this job. And, if you're not already registered with us, you need to be registered, especially if you are an independent artist, meaning you don't have an administrator and you don't have a publisher acting on your behalf. If you are self-published, self-administered. You have to register with the MLC to collect this money. If you do have a publisher or an administrator, then you should be good, but always good to check up on them. These are people on your team that you hire, you give up your rights so that they can act on your behalf. And so just make sure everybody's doing their job. But that's what I do.
Awesome. And I will say that I've noticed as well, sometimes people have given some kind of publishing administration to a third party without realizing it. And that party has registered with the MLC on their behalf, and they don't necessarily even realize. So I think the MLC has a public search, right? So you can always check for your songs and you can go take a look on the MLC is it .com or .org? I've forgotten.
.com.
.com. So it's the MLC.com and there's a public search there. So you can always go look for your songs. Um, so I'm just gonna sort of start off with sometimes an artist doesn't necessarily think of themselves as a songwriter, right? Because they're very focused on the actual sound recording and what the music is that they've released. So, what are some considerations that you think would be helpful for artists who don't necessarily think of themselves as a songwriter, and like where do they start in really starting to understand what they need to do? I turn
I
that
don't know.
over to
I
whichever
didn't know
one
who
of
you
you
were
wants
aiming
to.
that question to. I didn't want to cut
Oh,
someone
nobody,
off.
sorry. Mike, go ahead.
To be honest, listen, I deal with mainly producers on a daily basis. Not saying we don't have actual artists on our roster. We do, a lot of songwriters. But I mean, even on the production side, producers don't think they're songwriters sometimes, but they are actually contributing to that underlying composition. So, I think at the end of the day, if you're creating music, you probably own some publishing. So it's the easiest way to look at it, in my opinion, is if you're putting something out, even just a beat, you still own publishing rights, composition rights. So, I don't know. To me, it's pretty simple. You make music, you put it out, you register it, and that's kind of what I kind of beat into everybody's head every day on socials, on things like this. It's sometimes it's just about getting started and getting things lined up. And just going. Sometimes people just debate this, and this is what I deal with every day, unfortunately, with producers is, oh, I didn't register my records for 4 years, 5 years, 3 years, whatever it is. And it's always this question of, well, why? Right. And most times they don't have answers. And I think some of it is just they're confused or they just don't know what's going on. Um, but understanding that when you're creating this music and you have ownership and you're not assigning your ownership away, you have that right to collect that. So, um, yeah, I don't know. It's just you make music, just go register it. Most people are songwriters at the end of the day. There shouldn't be any reason you think you're not. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's if you are involved at all in the lyrics or the melody of the song, that's really how the musical work is defined. Um, if that is a portion that you are in control of as an artist or have been involved with as an artist or producer or any other, person in that song creation, you are a songwriter, and that is something that's absolutely worth, evaluating. So what you're saying is there's never too early, is what you're saying.
no, it's never too early. If anything, you shouldn't wait because what I see on a daily basis, and again, it's unfortunate. I talk to producers, I mean, again, artists too, but mainly producers, and I ask them why they don't register, and they either say, "Oh, my manager told me not to register," or "I'm holding it out for a bigger deal," or a lot of these things that, like, okay, some of it might line up a little bit, but majority of it doesn't. And what happens is this: A, you don't register your records, and you are possibly going to deal with black box royalties, right? MLC is great because they don't have a black box, and Jamie, you can interrupt and tell me I'm wrong if I am, but they were just formed in 2020. So, but a lot of these other societies have black box, meaning after a certain amount of time these royalties disappear if you don't register them. But that's not only the only thing that I see every day that is troublesome. It's fraud. There is so much fraud in publishing, and there's a lot of publishers out there or companies out there that aren't fact checking things and doing things the right way, and they're allowing fraud to get through. So let me give you an example. You have a song, you decide, oh, I'm not going to register it because I'm just going to sit here and wait on my money and just let it stack up and have all this leverage to get a bigger deal. But me, someone knowledgeable like me who doesn't have good intentions, I do have good intentions, but someone like me who doesn't, I can go to a publisher right now, get through the door, register it at 100% and be collecting money for years until you go to register it and find out. And I see this every day where people are like, hey, I'm ready to register. It's been 4 years. I do a quick check on their songs. It's registered. And now their money's missing. Now you got to go find those people and track that money down, which is never fun. So why I tell people they should register immediately, no matter if you have one song, 1,000 songs, whatever it is, just get it in. Once you get it in and you have a registration full, complete at 100% with everybody's full names and everything's all the metadata is matching up, you are going to start the flow of money. And the quicker you can do that, the better you can do that, in my opinion, because there's just so many variables that can happen if you don't register. So
Agreed.
that's kind of my spiel on
No,
that.
absolutely. So I'm gonna flip over to Jamie real quick on this because when we talk about registration, and that can sometimes mean a lot of different things in publishing, right? So you can register with the U.S. Copyright Office, you can register with your performance rights organization, and the U.S. is unusual because we have six performance rights organizations, which is, fairly uncommon globally for one country to have so many organizations. And then there is the MLC, and there's of course, a lot of people get confused between all of these different places that they may need to go register their interests. So, Jamie, do you want to touch on some of the differences between the MLC and how that might be different, collecting streaming royalties from a distributor, from, DistroKid or TuneCore or something like that, and also maybe different from ASCAP or BMI, whoever, you potentially are registered with?
Yeah. So just to piggyback onto what Mike was saying, because it is so important, I think the minute you're in the studio and you're in the lab and you created that song, and that's when the money starts to flow. Like that's when you need to have everything locked in. You need to sit down and figure out the splits. You need to have everybody's name. You need to have everybody's publisher. You need to have all of that data ready. Because once that's done, backpedaling to try to get that information is more uncomfortable than just having the conversation when you're in the room. You know what I'm saying? So like it's a team effort, like let's get our money, let's make sure we have it on point, and then you go from there. But the minute you create that song is when you need to have all of that information from your collaborators. It's super important. I cannot stress it enough. And how many times have we seen the headache and the money wasted and the resources wasted after the song's already a hit and money's already lost. So don't be in that category. Don't be in that bucket. Okay, so we're gonna go through all of the differences between the rights, which is like the most fundamental thing when you're making music, and most creators unfortunately don't have a full understanding of this, and it's not really your fault. The industry was built to be extremely confusing, and it is not artist friendly in the slightest. So we're trying to fix that. um, the MLC, we collect specifically on streaming, your musical work, which is, the public performance or broadcast, or, of a musical work. So I think we have to go back a little bit and explain the difference between a musical work and a sound recording, because this is where I think a lot of people get confused. So the reason why songwriters and music publishers have so much rights and are entitled to a lot of money in that sense is because they own the underlying copyright. That's what they call the musical work and copyright law. So before the song is even recorded, before it's even recorded or distributed, it is written down by lyrics, the composition, the melody, all of those things are considered the musical work. And if you are the owner of that, you then have the right to authorize others to record and distribute that musical work. So then it becomes the sound recording. And as you know, you don't have to be the actual composer to perform the song or to record the song, but the composer, the lyricist, the songwriter, in a lot of cases, the producer has the right to authorize you to say, yeah, okay, you have a good enough voice, you can sing my song. Go ahead, record it. Um, so that's the difference there. So you have the musical work and the sound recording. Extremely important to understand the distinction before we even go down the road, because otherwise we're gonna lose everybody, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah, so on the musical work side,
Oh.
the owner of the musical work, the songwriter, the lyricist, the composer, and if you sign a deal with a third party to be your publisher, they can collect a portion of that money, but we'll get into that later. I don't want to muddle it up with a third party. So yeah, you own the right. So you get the performance royalties from your PRO, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, whenever your songs are performed on radio, television, live shows. Any of these performances are considered public performances of your song, and you would collect from those entities. Um, and also on the musical work side, you get a mechanical royalty. So, as the owner of the musical work of the composition, you have that right to authorize others to record and distribute it. Once that song is recorded and distributed into any format, whether it's physical or digital, that generates what we call a mechanical royalty. So that's where that term comes from. It's like an old school term when they used to have like those player pianos and they made
Player
those,
piano. Yep.
that was literally a mechanical royalty. So, you know, vinyl, cassettes, CDs, all of that stuff. That was the old school, way that mechanicals were generated. They still generate mechanical royalties through those formats. Vinyl, cassettes, CDs are still out there. But now in the digital age, we have streaming. So you are also collecting mechanicals for any streams of your song. And that's where the MLC comes into play. We are collecting specifically for digital streams of your song, and we're collecting those mechanical royalties for you and distributing them to you. I guess a distinction to be made is that, there used to be Harry Fox agents and we're only concerned with audio. TikTok, YouTube doesn't fall under the MLC umbrella. Did I lose everybody? Is that clear?
Well, I
Can you
was
start
gonna
over?
say,
I'm
yeah,
joking.
we have a document that if you want me to pop it up, I
Yes,
can do,
yes,
but
please do.
I will share this real quick, but we're going to be distributing this document around to the attendees as well. So,
Can I add something once you're, oh, sorry, you're
yeah,
sharing something.
no,
I didn't know
please
you were
do.
sharing something. I thought you meant after. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll just pop this up real quick. So as Jamie's speaking, if there's any,
So
No,
we were
everything.
talking about the sound, the musical work side. So that's the left
this is
side of
here.
the diagram where it talks about the public performance rights and the reproduction and distribution rights, and you'll see all the PROs are listed and the MLC is listed. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about paying the actual owners of the composition, the song before it's recorded and after it's recorded, but this is on the publishing side. So that's the big, distinction between
Registering with your PRO, ASCAP, BMI, being the most commonly known ones, that will take care of the MLC part, but that is not the case. And then also just something for everybody to be aware of, sometimes you're working with your distributor, you're putting something up onto, CD Baby or TuneCore or something like that, and something might pop up that says, hey, would you like us to administer this on your behalf? And so, sometimes even when you're thinking as the distribute, you will find yourselves in a situation where it's asking you to check a box and you check that box. And what you don't realize is that that's giving your, distribution company the rights to actually register with the MLC on your behalf, and they might. But that also means the MLC is sending them your publishing money, which you may not be aware of. So those are the kinds of things you have to think about and be ready to track down. So we'll send this document around later as well.
I just wanted to add on to it. Everything Jamie said was great and on point. I talk to over 100 creators a day through multiple channels, so I have a lot of quick hitting conversations. And I can't explain all that to them in a quick hitting scenario, which is understandable. For this, it's great. What I tell them is when they ask me this stuff, like I just got yelled at before I came on here from one of our members who's like, "Why are you collecting my sound exchange money?" And I'm like, "That's on the master side." They're like, "Oh." So I always quickly tell people, listen, there's two sides to every song. Composition side where the publishing lives, and then your master side, your master recording, right? Which is your distro kid, or if you're doing a deal with a major label, they have their own distribution arms. So they are paying you your master royalties, right? And then your master royalties also correlate with the advance or the fee they're giving you. That's all on the master side. So is Sound Exchange. It's a digital performance royalty, right? The thing to understand about the composition side publishing is that there's three main things that are being collected: your performance royalties, your mechanical royalties, and your sync royalties. So to simplify it, to make it quick, just remember every time you're creating, even just a beat, before an artist even gets on there, there's a master side and composition side. Just remember there's two sides to every song. And then if using that documentation that they're going to send, just visualize. I'm a visual learner. You tell me something, I'm like, wait, what'd you say? ADHD out the wazoo. But if I see something and I actually do it, it helps me. So I think that will help. But just remember, two sides to every song. We're focused just on the composition side here, but it's very important to understand that how these things are split up. So then you're not asking questions like, "Hey, Mike, who runs a publishing company, why aren't you collecting my sound exchange?" I have no problem answering these, but these are questions that you could easily look at and be like, "Oh, sound exchange is on the master side." And that's a whole other thing, which we're not getting into, but
Yes.
I just want to throw that out there. Just because like some of the times I get these questions, it's like I don't have time to spend 30 minutes. I'll just quickly give them a 30-second pitch. And usually that helps creators. I know it helped me understanding the split of that because it was very hard for me to understand that early on in my career.
It
Uh,
does.
so
Yeah.
hopefully that helps.
It does. Thank you, Mike. It is one of the most critical things that you do have to drum into your head, and thank you, Jamie, for, such a wonderful explanation because if you don't remember that the sound recording and the musical work are two separate copyrights, and the vast majority of the time they are traveling together, but there are times when they perhaps are not. Sometimes the musical work is off having its own life, right? For example, a cover version, it's got another life with a new sound recording, though, right? So there's still those connections that are being made. But you do have to think of them as the two components that work together. And a sound recording doesn't exist without the musical work. So really, it is that underlying, very specific tie-in that most people are not taking advantage of. They think very much on the artist side, but they're not thinking enough about the musical work. Okay, so does a songwriter need a publishing deal? Is it realistic for people to try and do this on their own, or is it, the risk of sounding like this is all very overwhelming? Like, are these steps that somebody could take on their own, and how much or how difficult would it be for them to just get started? Whichever one of you wants to
I mean,
jump
we're gonna
in.
have two totally different opinions on this.
No, and then I love
Which I
that.
love, which I
I
love.
love
So
that. Do it.
it's totally up to you. Listen, I give people an analogy. This is my analogy. And if you love to change your oil in your car, then pick another analogy. But I hate it. I hate it to a passion, right? But you have to do it. You gotta have this machine that you're trusting in your life in to be up to par, right? So if I don't want to do it, what do? I go down the street to my mechanic that's been doing this for 40 years, has all the experience, has the infrastructure, has the tools. I pay him $50. He gets my car back to me in an hour, hour and a half, whatever it is, right? So that analogy to me is publishing overall if you're looking to collect your royalties worldwide. All right. So to work with a publisher like us, like I said, we're partnered with Sony. You are giving Sony the right to go out there and collect your royalties help you. Now, outside of the collection, we do a lot more, and that's what makes us different. I don't want to make this into a rant about how great we are, but that is kind of the bottom line to me. Now, if you love changing your oil, you'll probably like them. This makes no sense. Pick something else you don't like to do that you pay someone to do. That's my take on it. I think it's fine to try to do everything on your own. I know people who have tried to do it. I've tried to do it. It's doable, but I don't know. I just got too much other stuff to worry about. That's me, and that's kind of what most of our members are dealing with as well. And I think that's why they obviously come and work with us. So I can't wait to hear Jamie's response, though.
I'm gonna let Jamie go, and I'm gonna
Oh,
sit.
yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you, Mike. I live in New York City and I'm constantly on a plane. So I send my laundry out because I don't have time. So I'm going to pay someone to go do my laundry while I can go do this, while I can teach songwriters how to collect their money. Um, but like this is my thought on the whole thing because um, sure, you can do everything. You can wear all the hats you want, but really you are running a company, right? As a creator, you are, and I preach this all the time, you are the CEO of your own startup. And when you're the CEO of a business, you eventually will hire a team. And that team, will add value by, whatever their area of expertise is. Okay. Now, the point that I always drive home and going back to where we started is that in order to hire a team, you need to understand what it is they're doing for you. So before you even decide whether you need a publishing deal or not, like some people, when they say they need a publishing deal, they don't really understand what that means. When they say I need an administrator, they don't really know what that means. When they say I need a manager, they don't really know what they want the manager to do for them, right? So I think the back to the basics, you need to understand what it is you need help with. Where do you need how do you need to build the team and why? And what are their job descriptions? So you got to understand whether you like it or not, you have to have a fundamental understanding of the rights that you own. Okay? You own all these rights until you decide you're going to give some away in order for them to do something for you, right? Like so yeah, I'm gonna hire Mike and his team to help me out because I need the help. But and I'm gonna give them, a cut. But why? So just understand that and work very closely with your team and constantly have the communication and the transparency is super important, but you really have to have a fundamental understanding before you even get to that point. So
I agree.
I'm all
Say it
about
again.
teamwork.
I agree. No, I love that. I've said that when you are an independent artist, an independent songwriter, an independent producer, right, you actually have the opportunity to build your team, build your trusted partners that are going to help handle your business, right? You do need to figure out what parts of your business you need help with. I don't do my own taxes because as a small business owner, I also need someone to tell me like these are the right expenses, these are your deductions, these are the things you need to focus on. And those things are really helpful to me. But I also I do need to understand the basics because otherwise you're also opening yourself up for the opportunity for somebody to take bad actions, to take advantage. The example that Mike was saying earlier, where they've gone and registered a bunch of stuff on your behalf and you've never seen that money because you didn't understand what they were doing or you didn't understand the scope of the work that you were assigning to them. So I think, both and being like, cool, I hope that works out. Because that's a very dangerous place to be. You don't want to be in that place either.
Can I add
Um,
one more thing to
yeah,
this? Just
please.
just for the record, our deal specifically, like our main deal is an admin deal, so you keep ownership. Now we have a partner called Sony who, like all these other majors out there, they want to do co-publishing deals. For the record, in 5 years that I've been doing this,
Look at
I
the
don't think I've
phone.
put anybody in a co-publishing deal. Not because people haven't asked, it's because I truly believe in ownership. Like you're not going to find me saying give away ownership. I believe in ownership so much and being able to leverage your catalog. And then down the road, maybe you want to do something with it. There's a lot of interesting things going on within the royalty space. So I think ownership is power. It really is. If you look around, you'll see that people who are in power probably have a lot of ownership. And I deal with this like on a big scale on the producer side, where it's we have other producers who are trying to put them in these deals where they're taking half of their ownership, and don't really offer anything back. It's more about the opportunity or the what if I don't do this? And that's what I have to deal with. It's people are like, well, why would I sign a deal with you guys when I can go sign with this person? But yeah, they want to put you in a 10-year deal and take half your money. And then in 2 years, you're going to come back to me and say, how do I get out of this? I'm going to say, you don't. So I have to have these hard conversations every day. Unfortunately, like Jamie was saying, people aren't doing and getting involved with. Don't just the blind follow the blind.
Right.
That's how we're just going to make things worse, unfortunately. So,
And every
Absolutely.
single deal is different, right? There is not a standard deal by any means. Publishers can structure a deal however they want, but just remember that you are the owner of the right that they actually want to, that they want to absorb. So like have the leverage. So don't ever forget that, right? Everything's negotiable. And if something doesn't sit well with you or you have a question, and there was a question here about the deliverables that a pub team should be doing, and that is different for every single situation, literally. Like there aren't two alike. So I think it's super important to, have all the conversations, ask all the questions, hire a really good team, whether it's, an attorney or someone who can really help you decipher the legalities and the contract before you get into it. But yeah, just know that there is no standard and every deal is different, and you do have the right to negotiate and advocate on your behalf.
Absolutely. So before we get into a couple of questions that are in the chat here, I'm for anybody who spent any time talking to me is big metadata nerd, and metadata is such a precursor to so many of these things, right? When you are putting together a song and you maybe are songwriting with somebody else and you want to have metadata be consistent, and by metadata it can mean many different things, but in this context, I'm talking about things like names being properly identified and spelled the same way, whether or not you're including a middle name or not. Making sure that you have things like your interested party information number, which is something granted to you by your PRO when you sign up with them, having your ISRC, which is attached to the recording at the time of release, like having all of this information in check. So, what are some of the common metadata mistakes that both of you see during the course of your day to day? Which, again, I'm expecting different answers because you have slightly different, spaces that you're looking at it from. But what are some of the things that an independent
Jamie,
takes
you
to
want to go
avoid?
first? I feel like I always go first, and I want to keep going first. I feel like I'm hogging the mic.
Okay,
I'm
Jamie,
not
you
keeping
go.
track. Well, okay, so metadata is how you get paid. So it is the most important thing. Without the metadata, none of these entities would know who to pay. So I'll go back to like before I was at the MLC, I spent 19 years at CSAC. So on the performing rights side of things, I mean, I saw all kinds of problems, mainly disputes between songwriters and splits, which also affects the metadata. But more importantly, like you said earlier, just like having people's correct legal names is so basic, but like the spelling and of course there's human error here because sometimes people just misspell things when they're registering works and then that can mess everything up too. So on that front, something I always want to stress is that even once you do have the metadata, once you are registered and your songs in the system, there is maintenance involved. Like you have to constantly maintain your catalog and just make sure everything looks right. But yeah, I think, from the start, like having everybody's legal names, so simple, but you have to have that like first and foremost. That's like number one. It sounds so ridiculous and rudimentary, but it's just a fact. It became such a big problem for so many countless songwriters that I worked with over the last couple decades, like just having a misspelling. Um, even having everybody's publishing entities, whether it's their own or a third party, having all of that information, concise and all in one place is super important. So, split sheets, like we have a toolkit that we can share after the fact. Like I think we're gonna share that with all of you later. But yeah, we have a template for a split sheet, which basically outlines all of the information you need to collect from your collaborators. So legal name, publishing companies, all of these like metadata points. And then from there, you get into the ISRC codes and all of that stuff. But that's after that, and I'll transition to Mike for that. So we're splitting, it's like teamwork here.
Yeah, so we actually, we being BeatStars, actually created a problem that we are now fixing and trying to make better. We created a platform where there's no middle people really at all. I mean, I guess you could consider us in the middle, but we're not part of the transaction, right? And you're having people from around the world come and buy beats off of BeatStars, or there's even artists on there selling stuff, right? So now you're having all this happen. There's a lot of people who do free downloads. There's a whole bunch of stuff. A lot of times people aren't putting their full names when they're buying beats. So we created a problem of how do you get this metadata if you don't actually know who's buying sometimes? And that is definitely a problem. But there's a lot of ways you can, obviously. Most people are putting that stuff in their agreements when they're buying on BeatStars. But also, we've partnered with a lot of cool companies. Company like PEX. We've partnered with Muso. So we've actually built in suggested track additions to our members' catalogs now. So you can log in and we'll say, hey, you have 75 songs we think we found for you. And that usually includes a lot of their names. We've also included a metadata like recommendation tool that basically will tell you the people's names. Now, there are times when people still can't find them. And it's a challenge, and we're still trying to figure out how to do that. And obviously, partnering with Sony, they're working on that as well because this is something new to them. Like I said, before 2020, they didn't partner with anyone like us. So we have millions of members. There's so many sales happening every day. It has definitely gotten tougher over time, but we've also been able to open up a lot of opportunities and money to people. So I don't want to say take the good with the bad, but we're working towards solutions. But I wanted to throw that out there because I think sometimes we think as like working on a song, just everyone's in the same room and it just happens, right? We can get that information. We just see that yes, letting people find each other online and create music is great, but the metadata can suffer at times if people aren't including all that information. So.
Yeah.
I like to say everything's perfect, but I also like to be transparent and tell people like where we're at. But again, like I've seen more benefits to it than I do see negatives. But yeah, it's just there's so many different tools out there. I mean, sometimes even just going to Spotify and sometimes people will put the names on there. You can just literally get people's full names. But I always tell producers like it's great to follow up with your customers and things of that nature. And then I won't even get into stolen beats. I mean, that's a whole other thing because then
Right.
obviously you might not have their information if they stole it from you, but that's that you got to go get and get an agreement, get it cleared. That's a whole other thing which we deal with. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yep. I encourage everybody to own their metadata. This is probably one of the things I say most frequently is I want you to own it. I want you to have it documented. I want you to have it at hand. I don't want you to have to log into 5 different places to wrangle all your metadata into something. If let's say someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I've got a publishing deal for you," right? You don't want to scramble and be like, "Oh, hold on, where's all my stuff?" and have to go look for everything. It's always best practice to have it, in your hands. It's yours. We go back to that concept of ownership, like own your things, own your metadata, own your registrations, make sure that you understand what everything is, so that you can present it when needed, because there's various different circumstances where that may become necessary.
Yeah, I'm just going to add something here and we'll get super nerdy, even more metadata nerdy than you thought possible. But, in the music industry, like the back offices of all these collections, organizations, whoever they are, like around the world, they have these identifiers that they all use, right? And you've heard some of these before, your IPI number, your ISWC, your ISRC, your IPN, all of these weird, like more additional acronyms, um, that's what they use to identify the people associated, the rights holders, and the actual works and the recordings. These are specific numerical identifiers. So the most important, I think, that you always want to have on hand is your IPI, because that is your interested parties information, I think is
Interested
what it
party.
is. I,
Yep.
I only know this because of my CSAC background, by the way. I don't just know. Like
Put it
It's
on your split sheets. If
there you go.
you're writing songs with a collaborator and you guys put your IPI numbers on your split sheet, then there's definitely no distinguishing you from, a wrong person. You want to make sure, you've got all that in there. Okay. So we've just got a few minutes left, and I know we've got a couple of questions to address. But for anybody who might be feeling overwhelmed by all of this, like what is one really essential and most important action that they might take after this session? Jamie, you go first.
Okay. This is it. I call it the Holy Trinity. If there's one thing you need to do when you leave here today, it's you make sure that you are registered with these three organizations. Your PRO, so whether you're ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, maybe you're international, maybe you're with PRS, whichever PRO, whichever organization, make sure you're registered. Um, Also the MLC and Sound Exchange. Those are the three entities that collect royalties on your behalf, and we are all collecting three different royalty streams. So if there's one thing you do today, make sure that you're registered at all three of those organizations, your PRO, the MLC, and Sound Exchange. And like we said earlier, if you have a publishing deal or you have an administrator, oftentimes you're already covered here, but just double check, make sure.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to add one thing to that. Don't just register yourself as a person. Make sure you register all of your musical works, recorded or otherwise, right? If you haven't recorded it yet, or somebody hasn't recorded it yet, it's still part of your publishing catalog. Ultimately, it's still a viable copyright, even if it hasn't actually been recorded and converted into a sound recording yet. To go ahead and register that. Um, Mike, what do you think?
I thought the third one, Jamie was going to say BeatStars, but I was wrong. It was Sound Exchange. I'm messing with it. No, I agree. Listen, at the end of the day, you should sign up for all three of these. I'm signed up for all three of them, and I haven't put out music in 10 years. So, if you end up working with us as a publisher, we would take over as the publisher, and we would be collecting from places like the MLC and a lot of other places. So, but I'm still all for that advice as well, making sure you got all your ducks in a row and you're ready to go. So yeah, I would give the same. I would give the same feedback. Obviously, would love to
Of some other discussion at the time. So I'm going to loop back to that. With the MLC, collecting the money for streaming from, Spotify, Apple, other digital service providers of that ilk, who tells them what rate to pay? Do they just give the MLC the money, and then you distribute it to the registered parties? And then the addendum to that is who collects for those uses such as TikTok and Instagram and so on. Jamie, you're on mute.
Okay. We do not determine the royalty rates. That is determined by the copyright rate board, royalty board. But there are factors that determine the rate, based on the platform's market share, and that determines what they're required to pay out. So we do not determine that. We are just the entity that administers the license to all of these platforms and then distributes the royalties. And again, we're distributing the royalties at 100%. We're not taking an administration fee because by law, all of the streaming services are required to they pay our operating costs. So there's no reason to leave the money on the table because the registration is free. The money's being sent to us by law. They're required to do so. So, yeah, but to answer your question, we do not determine the royalty rate. As far as YouTube and TikTok, you would get some royalties from your PRO Natalie, you could probably give more detail on this on how TikTok and YouTube.
It's honestly it is very, very complicated. And so the part of the struggle, and this is a whole other session on its own, is how to collect from, YouTube, TikTok, the Meta, conglomerate of various social media platforms, because this case, but with regards to performance, with regard to those different rights, you will still see certain things pushed through to for your PRO, for example, that you would be absolutely entitled to if you're properly registered with your PRO. For something like YouTube, you might actually have to go in and do content ID, and actually go in and make certain claims yourself, for example. But at the very minimum, if you register with the three entities that, we've been talking about here, your PRO should be picking up at least some of that because they will have deals in place for that public performance. Um,
Can I add
so
something for TikTok and
yeah,
stuff that
please.
I see every day that I think is super interesting? So we have a guy who works at BeatStar. We actually have a lot of guys and girls who work at BeatStars who are creators, but this one specific guy, hit me up one day, and he uses our publishing service. He's like, dude, I got like 2 grand in my account. Like, I don't have big streams. How am I making all this money? So I was like, let me look. So he's right. He has like 100, 200 streams on his tracks on Spotify. You wouldn't look at this as a big streamer, but he's getting paid. So how does that happen? So we dug in and we looked. And what we found out was he had a beat. I think it was called cappuccino or latte or something. And a trend of some sort hit on TikTok where people were making their videos, grabbing their coffee, and now they're like, oh, I need a beat for a music for this. So they go and they search and they put in cappuccino, and his beat somehow comes up, and they're picking it and assigning that audio to their new piece of content. That is a sync, probably called a micro sync. It's smaller, right? But he was getting so many of these that the money kept adding up and he was getting paid out from. So I always tell creators this. It's like, well, why should I register the song? It's got 200 streams or 5,000, whatever the number is that they come to me. And I say, there's a lot of other factors at play if you don't register this record. That one, and then also if this thing ends up getting picked up to be synced from a bigger sync company, how are they tracking you down? And then also to the biggest thing, which I see all the time with our members. I have members who have songs from 20 years ago and now they're getting repaid because Megan Thee Stallion has come along and has used their composition from 20 years ago or 15 years ago for their new song, and they're getting a publishing piece there. If you don't register that record, how are they going to find you? So anyhow, going back to the TikTok thing, I think it's just interesting with some of these platforms when people are using your music to create a new piece of content, they're syncing your stuff. So don't always just look at streams. It's not always just about streams. Now, it's a huge indicator, don't get me wrong. But a lot of other cool things going on behind the scenes.
And actually, it's interesting too because we're gonna deal with sync tomorrow, but when it comes to sort of your catalog and the longevity of your catalog too. So the copyright in the US is the life of the author plus 70 years. That's how long the copyright lasts, right? So if you're in a band, it is the life of the last remaining author plus 70 years. So let's say, let's take the Beatles, for example. John Lennon died many, many years ago. Paul McCartney is still alive. So the Beatles stuff is all still that they wrote together is all still very much covered under copyright. So things can happen. We'll use something like, Kate Bush in Stranger Things, where suddenly all of her stuff became new again and it was introduced to a completely new audience. Now, her streaming, because of that sync placement, also spiked significantly. And if you're not prepared, you don't want to necessarily wait for the viral moment or wait for that sudden invigoration of a catalog or suddenly something happens where you become big. You don't want to wait for that to happen and then be like, oh, I should go get my stuff organized, right? Look, and fortune favors the prepared. So you want to get it done. That way, if that viral moment happens, you're ready. Some valuable insights. So,
That's that's the money you make in your sleep, that
right.
passive income, that's the dream.
It
So,
is.
you know,
I agree. Okay, so let me see, we've got a couple more things here. Dina's question here, when she registers with the Copyright Office, register it unpublished. Can it be published before the copyright is actually issued? Because it can take some weeks. Dina, do you want to clarify what you mean?
Yeah, so I've been registering my songs with the Copyright Office for the composition and the master recording. And when I finally get the copyright, like 8 weeks later, then it will say the date of the copyright is the date I applied with the government. So I'm just wondering if I have to wait but can I then put it out even though like I register it April 28th, I register it today. And then 2 weeks later, I'm gonna release it, even though I technically haven't gotten the copyright. But when I do get the copyright, it's gonna say April 28th, 2 weeks before the song was released. So basically, I'm wondering if I can release it prior to waiting for the copyright, or else you have to pay like $800 a song.
no, absolutely. You're good. You're fine.
Okay.
The copyright is really just a protective measure, for down the road if something arises, whether, if some type of infringement happens, and it's really just so you have record of it, to protect yourself. But it doesn't at all have to stop you from releasing something. But the fact that you actually did it props to you
Hmm. There's
for
a lot of people who release without registering with the US Copyright Office.
But you
And it,
can't get the infringement claim if you don't have it registered.
that is the added bonus of the Copyright Office registration is that you get that additional protection against the infringement claim. So that being said, even if you just register it with the main central entities for the music industry, though, that is certainly better than doing nothing. Okay. Okay, we are at time. So, Carolyn, I'm going to hand it back over to you. This is just day one. Just getting
Hi
started.
guys. I have learned so many big words today. I am so excited I have like 2 pages of notes here. I'm gonna go home and study. So thank you for that information. And to recap, the most important thing to do as soon as we get off the Zoom is to register with your PRO, register with the MLC, and register with Sound Exchange. You are not just a human songwriter, but all of your tracks also need to be registered too. So do all of the things, collect all of your money. Cucumbers are like $8 right now, so please go get your coins. Okay, we can all use them. Um, for more information on publishing, please join us tomorrow for day 2, same time, same Zoom link. We're learning about sync tomorrow. Sync is one of the things that artists ask me about every single day. right? I know that whether you work with artists or you're an artist yourself, sync is one of the best ways to monetize your music. So let's figure out how to get your publishing right so you can collect all of your sync dollars. Because if a sync opportunity comes in and your publishing isn't right, that opportunity is going to pass you by, right? So let's figure out how to make sure you're ready to go. Like Natalie said, fortune favors the prepared. So I will see you tomorrow at 2. If you have not joined the playground yet, if you're interested in learning more, please shoot me a message, Carolyn at bigasskids.com. You can shoot me a message on LinkedIn, IG. I'm very accessible. Would love to have you in our neighborhood full of music creatives, artists, music freelancers, people who just want to connect and work with good human beings. That's where we're at. So we will see you tomorrow at 2. Natalie, thank you so much. Mike, Jamie,
Thank you.
you guys are
Thank
invaluable.
you guys.
Thank you guys. This was a pleasure.